The forbidden curiosity. The stars were silent when the alien fleet found the human warship. It drifted in the emptiness between systems, a black shape against the glowing edge of a blue star. At first the crew believed it was only wreckage, a dead ship that had been left behind after some forgotten battle. To them it looked like nothing more than an ancient trophy waiting to be claimed. The commander of the alien fleet was eager. Human technology had been feared for centuries, but very little had been truly studied. Humans were known to be dangerous, their weapons brutal, their ships legendary for their endurance. Yet here, in the void, was a single warship alone and powerless. To the commander, it was an opportunity too valuable to ignore. He ordered his vessels closer. The alien scientists whispered to one another with excitement. They believed the humans had finally made a mistake. A warship was a treasure chest of secrets, its engines, its weapons, its armor. If they could study even a fraction of it, their empire could rise above every rival. They imagined new weapons powered by stolen human designs, shields copied from this very ship, engines that could outrun any enemy. Greed burned in their eyes. As the fleet approached, the human warship loomed larger. Its design was like a blade carved from black stone, sharp and silent. The hull was scarred but not broken. Blue lines of light glowed faintly along its surface like veins still carrying blood. The aliens felt unease at the sight, but they pushed the feeling aside. They told themselves it was only metal and circuits, nothing more. The commander gave the order. Smaller vessels broke away, circling the warship. Beams of scanning light crossed its hull, recording every inch. The results were strange. The ship seemed to respond to the scans as if it were aware of being touched. Systems deep within the vessel flickered, then went dark again. One scientist suggested that perhaps the warship still lived. He was laughed at by the others. Machines did not live, they argued. Finally, the commander approved boarding. A group of soldiers and researchers entered a docking craft and moved toward the warship. The docking clamps connected with a heavy sound that echoed through the silent void. As the hatch opened, the aliens expected dust, silence, and decay. Instead, they found a corridor intact, lit by a dim blue glow that stretched far into the darkness. The air inside was heavy, metallic, and carried the faint echo of old battles. Walls were lined with panels that pulsed faintly, like they were breathing. The aliens advanced slowly, their boots striking against the cold metal floor. Every sound echoed like a warning. The lead scientist touched one of the glowing panels. It was warm to the touch, far too warm for a ship that had supposedly been drifting for decades. Symbols appeared on the panel in human script, symbols none of them could read. The panel responded to their presence as if it had been waiting. They moved deeper. The corridors were wide and endless, designed for giants of war. Rooms opened on either side, filled with strange shapes. Control chairs, weapon racks, empty chambers that once held machines of war. The aliens whispered to one another. They wanted to record everything, to carry every detail back to their empire. But with each step, the silence grew heavier. One soldier swore he heard footsteps that did not belong to them. Another reported lights flickering at the end of the hallway. The commander dismissed their fears, calling them victims of imagination. But deep inside, even he felt the same crawling sense that the ship was not empty. They reached the central chamber, a massive hall filled with command stations. Screens lined the walls, though they were dark. In the center stood a raised platform with a single chair, facing a wide window that looked into the stars. The chair was empty, yet when the aliens stepped closer, the screens around the hall blinked alive one by one. Human symbols filled them, warnings they could not understand. A voice whispered through the chamber, deep and cold. The aliens froze. They could not translate the words, but the meaning was clear. It was a warning. The warship was not dead. Panic stirred among the scientists. Some begged to retreat, to report what they had seen before it was too late. But the commander was not ready to leave. He was blinded by greed. He ordered them to continue, to access the systems, to unlock the secrets of the humans. The aliens obeyed, though fear made their hands tremble. As they worked, the ship responded again. Lights grew brighter, systems hummed. The floor vibrated with new energy. The warship was waking. One soldier turned back toward the corridor. He thought he saw a shadow move across the wall. He called out, but no one answered. Only silence followed, heavy and final. Still, the commander pressed on. He spoke of power, of victory, of the empire rising with human weapons at its command. But behind his words was something none of them could ignore. The ship itself was listening. The forbidden curiosity that brought them here was no longer an opportunity. It was a door they had opened, and now it would never close again. Inside the sleeping beast, the air inside the human warship grew heavier as the aliens moved deeper. Their lights shone against walls of black metal, and every reflection seemed like a pair of eyes watching them. The corridors were not broken or ruined as they had hoped. Instead, they were strangely clean, as if time had not touched them. Each step the soldiers took echoed too loudly, like the ship was listening. The researchers whispered nervously, but their voices bounced back at them from the walls, multiplied until it sounded like a crowd murmuring in the dark. It was impossible to know where the sounds truly came from. One scientist stopped before a door that looked sealed. Strange markings in human script ran across it, glowing faintly. He pressed his scanner against the surface, and the machine went dead at once. Sparks flew. The lights dimmed, and the door slid open by itself with a slow hiss. Inside was a chamber filled with long black tables. Straps hung from their sides as though they once held bodies. The room felt colder than the corridor. Frost lined the edges of the walls, though the air should not have allowed it. The aliens moved quickly through, not daring to linger, but unease grew inside them. They began to understand that this ship was not simply built. It was designed to breathe, to think, and to remember. The commander ignored their doubts. He believed that every secret in this warship was worth the risk. He ordered them deeper toward the core, where the true systems of the ship must rest. As they walked, the lights began to flicker one by one behind them. What they did not see was how the ship sealed each corridor as they passed. What they believed to be a path of retreat was quietly disappearing, closing them inside. The team reached a massive hall. The walls were lined with tall black columns that pulsed faintly with light. The floor glowed under their boots, patterns shifting like water following their steps. The lead scientist whispered that the ship was scanning them, measuring every breath, every heartbeat. One soldier struck one of the columns with the end of his rifle, trying to show courage. The moment the weapon touched the surface, the column came alive. Blue light surged through it, racing across the hall until every column blazed with power. The floor vibrated beneath them and a deep hum filled the air, like the growl of something waking after a long sleep. Then the screens lit up. Dozens of them rose from the floor and walls, displaying strange codes and human words that none of them understood. The voice returned louder this time, echoing in the chamber. It was cold, steady, and carried no emotion. The aliens froze. Their translators tried to capture the meaning, but the machines only produced fragments. Words like intrusion, unauthorized, withdrawal advised. The commander refused to listen. He believed it was nothing more than a recorded message, a leftover defense. He ordered the scientists to connect their machines to the ship's systems and extract whatever data they could. The scientists obeyed, but their hands trembled. The moment they linked their equipment, alarms echoed through the ship. Red lights blazed overhead and the floor shuddered. Doors sealed behind them with a heavy crash. The ship was no longer warning them. It was acting. A low sound filled the hall like machinery shifting beneath the surface. Panels opened in the walls, revealing strange drones shaped like spheres with glowing eyes. They hovered in the air, silent but deadly, their movements sharp and precise. The soldiers raised their weapons. The commander barked an order and the first shots rang out, bolts of energy striking the drones. But the blast seemed to vanish against invisible shields. The drones did not fall. Instead, they fired beams of blue light that cut through armor as if it were paper. 2 soldiers collapsed instantly, their bodies smoking on the glowing floor. Panic spread. The commander shouted for control, but no one listened. The aliens fired wildly, their weapons sparking uselessly against the drones. One by one, more soldiers fell. The survivors scrambled for cover, though there was nowhere to hide. The scientists tried to disconnect their machines, but the cables would not release. It was as if the ship had swallowed their tools, trapping them. Sparks burst from their scanners, burning their hands. They cried out in fear. Above them, the screens changed. No longer random codes, but images. Battles. Human warships destroying fleets in fire and light. Cities turned to ash by bombardment. Human soldiers standing silent in ruined worlds. Their ships behind them like gods of war. The message was clear. This ship carried not only weapons, but also memory. It was showing the aliens what humans had done and what it would do again. The voice returned, calm and final. Intruders. You were warned. The drones attacked with greater fury, beams slicing across the chamber. The aliens screamed, their courage gone, their mission forgotten. Some begged their commander to retreat, but the doors were sealed, the corridors locked. The commander realized too late that his greed had doomed them. The ship was not a relic. It was not abandoned. It was alive, aware, and built for one purpose only: war. As the survivors huddled together, the lights above shifted from red to a deep, cold blue. The sound of engines began to echo through the walls. The human warship was no longer drifting. It was awakening. The first warning. The chamber shook as the human warship's engines rumbled back to life. The sound was not like any machine the aliens had known. It was deep, almost alive, like the growl of some vast beast hidden inside the walls. The survivors clutched their weapons tightly, but their courage was draining away like water through broken glass. The drones circled high above them, their glowing eyes watching in silence. None of them fired again. It was as if they were waiting, holding back, studying every move the intruders made. The commander shouted for formation, but his voice cracked. His soldiers obeyed only halfway. Fear had settled into their bones. Then the screens lit once more and the voice returned. It was louder now, filling every corridor and every corner of the ship. The words were human, harsh and commanding, yet they carried meaning even without translation. Withdraw. The aliens froze. Their translators processed fragments of the message. Unauthorized presence. Last chance. Withdraw immediately. The scientists looked at one another in terror. Some whispered that they should leave, that the ship had given them mercy. But the commander's pride burned too strong. He had lost soldiers already. He had seen too much. To return empty-handed would be shame before his empire. He refused to retreat. He raised his weapon and fired at the nearest drone. The bolt of energy burst against the shield, useless. The drone responded instantly. A thin beam of blue light struck the commander's arm. His weapon clattered to the floor as his armor smoked and cracked. He screamed in pain, clutching the wound. His pride shattered in an instant. The soldiers panicked. Some dropped their weapons, others fired blindly. The drones did not kill them all, not yet. Instead, they released waves of light that cut through the floor, creating barriers and cages of energy. The aliens found themselves trapped in small clusters, unable to move freely. The voice returned again. This time the translators caught more. You are not prepared. You are not welcome. Leave or be erased, the aliens trembled. Even the bravest among them felt the weight of the words. The warship was speaking not as a machine, but as a judge. It had given them one last chance, and they could feel the truth of it in their hearts. But greed and pride still poisoned their leader. Wounded but furious, the commander shouted for them to press on. He demanded that the scientists force the ship's systems open, to tear its secrets free before escape. His words were not of courage, but of desperation. One scientist, shaking, connected his device to a glowing console despite the warnings. Sparks erupted at once. The ship resisted, its lights flaring, the air filled with a deep hum. The console surged with energy, and the scientist's body convulsed before he fell lifeless to the floor. His equipment melted into the metal, consumed as if it had never existed. The others screamed. Some dropped to their knees, begging to leave. The commander staggered, clutching his burned arm, refusing to accept what his eyes had seen. He shouted that the humans were only legends, that their machines were not gods. He tried to convince his soldiers that this was a trick, an illusion to scare them. But the drones moved closer, their eyes burning brighter, and no one believed him anymore. Suddenly, the walls themselves shifted. Hidden doors slid open, revealing great cannons built into the interior. Their barrels glowed with violent blue light, aimed not at the intruders but outward into the void. The ship was preparing to act beyond its own halls. Through the wide window of the command chamber, the aliens saw their fleet waiting outside. Dozens of their own ships hung silently in formation, unaware of what was happening within. The human warships' weapons aligned, targeting them one by one. Terror spread among the intruders. They shouted into their communicators, begging their fleet to retreat, to run before it was too late. But the signals did not pass through. The ship blocked every message, holding their empire's ships blind and helpless outside. The voice spoke again, colder than before. This is your final warning. The drones began to move faster, their beams striking close but not yet killing. They sliced the floor near the soldiers' feet, carved holes in walls beside their heads, destroying everything except their flesh. It was not mercy, it was demonstration. The warship was showing them its control, reminding them that their lives could be ended in a heartbeat. A single soldier broke under the pressure. He threw down his weapon and ran toward the sealed corridor, screaming that he wanted to escape. The drones responded instantly. A beam cut across his chest and he fell in silence, the smell of burning metal and flesh filling the chamber. The survivors collapsed in despair. Their commander no longer spoke of victory. His pride had turned to ash. His soldiers looked at him not with loyalty but with hate, blaming him for dragging them into a grave they could not escape. One scientist whispered the truth no one wished to hear. The humans built these ships to be more than machines. They built them to be guardians, and we woke one. The commander lowered his head. For the first time he believed it, but it was too late. The ship had given its warnings, and warnings could not last forever. The drones spread apart, forming a wide circle around the intruders. The lights overhead shifted from cold blue to blood red. The air vibrated with energy, and the hum grew into a roar. The human warship had decided. Humanity's hidden wrath. The silence broke with a sound that shook the chamber like thunder. The human warship's core ignited, a deep vibration that pulsed through the walls, the floor, and even the bones of the intruders. The air grew hotter, charged with energy, as if the entire vessel had become a storm waiting to be released. The aliens staggered, their bodies trembling under the force of something far greater than them. The drones no longer fired. They only circled, watching, keeping the intruders contained as the ship prepared for something far worse. Outside, beyond the sealed windows, the alien fleet held its place. Hundreds of soldiers sat unaware in their vessels, their screens blind, their signals blocked. They could not see what was happening within, nor could they sense the beast that had awakened around them. They believed their commander was in control. They did not know they had already been marked for death. Then it began. The cannons along the warship's hull came alive in a sudden blaze of blue fire. The glow spread across the dark body of the ship like veins of lightning, tracing every edge and line. From the outside, it no longer looked like a derelict relic. It looked alive, awake, and furious. The first blast erupted a beam of pure energy that tore through space. It struck the nearest alien vessel, and in an instant the ship was gone. Not broken, not shattered. Gone, reduced to ash and fragments that scattered into the void. The alien intruders inside the warship screamed. Some fell to their knees, realizing the fate of their comrades. Others clutched their heads in despair, knowing their entire fleet was helpless. The commander stood frozen, his eyes wide, his burned arm forgotten. He had wanted human secrets, and now he was watching them firsthand. The warship did not stop. Its weapons moved with impossible speed, targeting each vessel outside. Another beam, then another, each one striking true. Alien ships exploded like sparks against the dark canvas of space. The void became a battlefield lit by fire and ruin. The intruders pressed their faces against the glass of the wide viewing window. They saw their proud fleet fall apart in moments. Ships that had taken decades to build, destroyed in seconds. Crews that numbered in thousands, erased without even firing a shot. There was no chance to resist, no hope of survival. Against a single human warship, they were less than insects. The scientists wept. They understood now why humans had been feared for centuries. Their technology was not only advanced, it was merciless. It carried within it the weight of wars that had shaped humanity into something unyielding. The ship's voice returned, cold, steady, final. This is the fate of those who trespass. The commander tried to shout back. His voice cracked and broke as he cried out that they were explorers, not enemies. He begged for mercy, swearing that they had come only to learn. But the ship did not answer him. Its judgment had already been made. Another wave of fire burst from the cannons. The last of the alien vessels outside split apart, burning until nothing remained but drifting wreckage. The fleet was gone. Thousands of lives ended in silence, their empire wounded beyond repair. Inside the chamber, the survivors stood in stunned quiet. The air was thick with smoke from the earlier drone attacks, but their eyes were fixed on the destruction outside. They had seen war before, but never like this. They had believed themselves strong, their empire mighty. Now they saw themselves as fragile creatures who had dared to touch a flame far too bright. The drones lowered, surrounding them closely. Their glowing eyes burned like coals in the dark. The survivors did not resist. They no longer had strength for defiance. Then the screens around the chamber shifted again. This time they showed images, not warnings. Human faces, human battles, human victories across ages. Soldiers standing proud on ruined worlds. Fleets of warships sailing across the stars, entire civilizations broken before them. Humanity's history was written in fire, and the warship was its storyteller. One of the scientists whispered in despair, "They are not like us." They never were. Their ships are not machines, they are monuments. They are warnings carved in steel. The warship's voice filled the hall one final time. Remember this lesson. Humanity does not forgive trespass. Humanity does not forget intrusion. The commander sank to the floor. His pride had left him, his empire's glory shattered in his eyes. He knew then that he would never see his home again. The ship had given its warning, had shown its wrath, and now it would decide their fate. The lights above shifted back to deep blue. The hum of the engines steadied, powerful but calm, like a predator resting after the hunt. The warship floated once more in silence, but it was no longer the silence of a corpse. It was the silence of a beast waiting for the next fool to disturb its rest. The survivors trembled. They knew the truth now. Curiosity had doomed them, and their empire would never recover from this day. The forbidden secrets of humanity had not been revealed. They had been burned into their memory as scars. The warship had spoken, and its message was eternal. The price of curiosity. The chamber was quiet now, but it was not the peace of safety. It was the quiet of judgment already made. The survivors stood trembling in the glow of the warship's lights, their hearts heavy with despair. Outside, only drifting wreckage remained where once their proud fleet had stood. Thousands of lives had ended in silence, erased in the time it takes to breathe. The commander leaned against the cold wall, his body broken, his arm still scorched from the earlier strike. His eyes were hollow, staring into nothing. All his ambitions, all his pride had turned to dust. He had wanted glory, to carry human secrets back to his empire, to rise above his rivals. Instead, he had led his people into a grave from which none would escape. The scientists huddled together, whispering prayers to gods that had long since abandoned them. They had studied many species across the stars, but never had they seen such cruelty hidden inside silence. This was not science, not exploration. This was punishment. The drones hovered closer. Their glowing eyes cast blue light on every face, measuring fear, weighing guilt. None resisted. None had the strength left to fight. They had seen what the warship could do, and they knew their lives hung on the thinnest edge of mercy. Then the screens lit up again. The survivors looked up in dread, expecting more destruction, more fire, more death. Instead, they saw words forming in human language, slow and deliberate. Their translator spoke the meaning aloud in broken tones. "You were warned. You did not listen. The price has been paid." The commander fell to his knees. His voice was hoarse as he begged. He did not ask for freedom anymore. He asked only that the story of what happened here be carried back to his empire. He wanted others to know the truth, to understand the terror he had awoken, to never repeat his mistake. The warship's voice answered. It was not cruel. It was not kind. It was only final. One of you will return. Only one. To carry the memory. To speak the warning. This is how humanity ensures silence. The survivors broke into cries. Some screamed that it was unfair. Others clung to one another, knowing their time was over. The commander bowed his head. He understood. This was not mercy. This was strategy. Humanity left witnesses not to forgive, but to spread fear. The drones moved at once. Their beams cut through the chamber, swift and precise. One by one, the survivors fell in silence, their bodies collapsing on the glowing floor. The air filled with smoke and the smell of scorched metal. Only one was spared. A single scientist, trembling and broken, dragged forward by beams of light that bound his body like chains. The warship spoke again. You will live. You will carry this day to your kind. They will learn. They will fear, and they will never return. The scientist wept. He did not want this gift. Life was no mercy when it came with the burden of carrying terror across the stars. Yet the warship gave him no choice. A door opened at the far end of the chamber, the first open path since their arrival. The drones guided him through endless corridors, each one alive with the pulse of the ship's heart. He passed the rooms where his comrades had walked, now empty, their echoes gone forever. He stepped into the docking bay where his craft still waited, untouched. as if the ship had saved it for this very purpose. The scientist climbed aboard, his hands shaking so badly he could barely touch the controls. The clamps released and his small craft drifted away from the warship. He looked back one last time through the window, his eyes filled with dread. The warship floated in silence once more, its black hull glowing faintly with blue light. It looked like a beast that had eaten its fill and returned to slumber. Yet he knew it was not asleep. It was waiting, always waiting, for the next fool who dared to trespass. Then, as his craft moved farther, he saw something that chilled him deeper than all else. The warship shifted slightly, adjusting its position in space. And in that movement he understood. It was not drifting by chance. It was choosing its place, hiding where others might find it, luring curiosity again and again. This was not an accident. This was a trap carved into the stars. The scientist screamed, but no one heard. He was only one voice in the endless void, carrying the memory of death back to a broken empire. He would live his life haunted, cursed to repeat the warning. Never touch the human warships. Never study them. Never wake them, for they do not forgive. They do not forget. Far behind him, the warship dimmed once more, returning to its silence. To those who passed nearby, it would look abandoned again. Nothing but a relic of war, but in its heart it remembered. It always remembered. And in the black ocean of space, memory was the sharpest weapon of all.